7 years ago, President Donald Trump addressed the United Nations. Quote, "Let's choose a future of patriotism, forever sovereign, and forever thankful for the grace and glory of God." He said, quote, "We are renewing the principle of sovereignty. Our government's first duty is to our citizens." He explained that under the American Constitution, the people are sovereign. Well, the American left was outraged. Anne Applebaum found his entire worldview naive and incoherent, and his notion of sovereignty ill-defined. The Washington Post declared Trump's speech a disastrous, nationalistic flop and globally destabilizing. Particularly upsetting to the Post was Trump's denunciation of uncontrolled immigration. The ACLU charged that Trump's emphasis on sovereignty was an effort to justify a shameful record of human rights violations, including the so-called Muslim ban. Now, across the ideological spectrum, Daniel Henninger, on the Wall Street Journal's editorial page, declared that when it comes to Trump's thought on sovereignty, he was stumped. Sovereignty. I have no graspable idea of what he's talking about. Well, let's examine these criticisms. The American left in general has a problem with sovereignty. In 1992, Strobe Talbott, close friend of Bill Clinton, and later his Deputy Secretary of State, predicted that, quote, "Someday nationhood will be obsolete," unquote, and he welcomed this development. Anne Marie Slaughter, the head of policy planning at Bill Clinton's State Department, declared the only way that states can express their sovereignty is through participation in global governance. She specifically mentions immigration as an issue that should be addressed globally. She argues that sovereignty should be pooled. Of course, as sovereignty is pooled, it's no longer sovereignty. Now, Harold Koh was a legal advisor in Obama's State Department. As a Yale law professor, Koh promoted what he called the transnational legal process. He specifically said that international law should be downloaded into the U.S. Constitution. Clearly, Koh's transnational legal process ignores the concept of government by consent of the governed. Now, in contrast to President Trump's speech to the United Nations, President Obama told the United Nations in 2016, quote, "We have bound our power to international law, norms, and institutions. I am convinced that in the long run, giving up our freedom of action and binding ourselves to longstanding American rules will help our security in the long run." Now, Strobe Talbott, Anne Marie Slaughter, Harold Koh, they exemplify the ideological mindset of the deputy secretaries and assistant secretaries who fill the upper ranks of the Clinton, Obama, and Biden administrations. This viewpoint is usually described as liberal internationalism. But it's not really internationalism, because that implies relations between nation states. Rather, it's transnationalism and supranationalism, moving above and beyond nations, including all nations, because what it means essentially is transferring power from these nations, including democratic ones, to global institutions. So instead of calling them internationalists, we should call them transnational progressives. Now, Abraham Lincoln defined sovereignty as a political community without a political superior. Transnational progressives see global laws as superior to national political communities like the United States. Hence, transnational progressives could be described as post-sovereign, post-democratic, post-American here in that sense. Well, they put this theory of transnationalism into practice on immigration policy. In June 2014, as thousands of unaccompanied minors flooded the United States-Mexican border, Nancy Pelosi, at a press conference from Rio Grande Valley, declared, quote, "We are all Americans, north and south in this hemisphere. This is a community with a border running through it. Well, Pelosi's transnational progressive dream of a decade ago was implemented by Biden's 4 years of open borders. Now let's turn to the business wing conservatism of the Wall Street Journal. What did Dan Henninger mean when he said he had no graspable idea of what President Trump was talking about or what he meant by sovereignty? Now, obviously, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal understands the concept of sovereignty. They understand very well what it means. They're simply uncomfortable, essentially, with the subject. They know that the American people embrace strong borders, and the American people understand that mass illegal immigration makes a mockery of sovereign self-government. Now, the journal editors believe in the free flow of goods, services, and people across national boundaries. Their whole approach to sovereignty is sort of muddled. They would prefer mass immigration to be legal, but they don't actively oppose illegal immigration. For example, they consistently oppose the implementation of mandatory E-Verify legislation, which would allow businesses to check the immigration status of employees and therefore, if they wanted to, get rid of illegal employees. Now, the journal does support sovereignty on certain foreign policy issues, but on illegal immigration, they're transnationals. You can call them, instead of transnational progressives, you can call them transnational pragmatists. In any case, as transnationalists, they are in conflict, they're definitely in conflict with the whole concept of American sovereignty. The journal is part of what we could call liberal conservatism, as opposed to national conservatism. Liberal conservatism dominated the American right from the 1990s to the rise of Donald Trump. Think of Grover Norquist's Leave Us Alone coalition. How did that work out? The liberal conservative approach to sovereignty was mixed. On national security issues, liberal conservatives were sovereigntists, like the George W. Bush administration, unsigned the International Criminal Court, ICC treaty, because it threatened American sovereignty. The Bush administration also promoted the American Service Members Protection Act, which is nicknamed the Hague Invasion Act, because it authorized the American president to use force to free American officials and military held by the ICC for alleged war crimes. But sovereignty on immigration issues was another matter entirely. The Bush 43 administration, led by Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez, promoted North American integration through the Security and Prosperity Partnership, SPP. This directly challenged American sovereignty. The first priority of SPP and in the document was, quote, to facilitate the movement of people across North America, unquote. Secretary Gutierrez stated, quote, we must formalize a transnational labor force that could work in any North American country. Besides the free flow of labor across the orders, the building of this, what they call the North American community with the SPP, this would include the establishment of a permanent transnational trade tribunal that would be the final arbiter on all trade disputes between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Imagine President Trump going along with that. A quintessential liberal conservative approach to immigration was proposed by Congressman Mike Pence during the Bush administration's mass amnesty push in 2006. The Pence plan promoted the creation of private, call them Ellis Island centers. They'd be located everywhere in the world. They would be run by private employment agencies that would match former illegal aliens, now guest workers, with willing American employers. Pence envisioned a process of illegal aliens returning to their home countries, getting a U.S. background check, coming back to America as guest workers. He said, this is Pence, this process will take a matter of a week or less. For the first time, for the first 3 years of the Pence plan, there would be no limit on immigration, on the numbers, on immigration visas issued to the former illegal aliens who are now guest workers. Pence declared, quote, "The market and the needs of U.S. employers will set the limit on the number of guest workers," unquote. After 6 years, the former illegal aliens, now guest workers, could apply for American citizenship. This is classic liberal conservatism, which has been surpassed by President Trump and then, as you can see in this conference, on national conservatism. Now, not surprisingly, the Wall Street Journal applauded the Pence plan back in '06. So where are we today on immigration and sovereignty? On sovereignty, obviously, the Trump administration is robustly enacting measures to combat and reverse this transnational progressive encroachments, the continuing mass immigration. What the administration is also doing, which is very important, is examining the usefulness to American national interests, to our participation in various international institutions. So the question is, which organizations should we stay in and which organizations should we leave? UNESCO, the World Health Organization, the Paris Climate Accord. We've already given notice over the next year that we are currently in the process, and we'll leave these institutions by next year, which is in accordance with their own rules and regulations. On the question of administration, of course, the administration has been very strong on the enforcement of laws against illegal immigration. We, ditto Tom Holman. We heard him this morning. Obviously, they're doing a terrific job. But on the old liberal conservative slogan, which was always illegal bad, legal good, as Mark Krikorian has said, he's been writing for years, this is not a satisfactory response to the 21st century rule. To ensure that our sovereignty, American sovereignty in the long run, to ensure the patriotic assimilation of immigrants, we need fewer, as Calvin Coolidge said, to assimilate them, and to ensure the entire survival of historic America, we have to reduce legal immigration. Thank you.